All right, welcome to another Small Business Pivot where we have special guests from around the world, different countries, across the pond, as they say. But you know that no one can introduce themselves and their business like the business owner. So I turn it over to you to tell us your name, your company, and just a little bit about you and where you're coming from.
Absolutely. I'm Stacey Bullman. I'm the founder and CEO of I'm Not Mad at You Consulting, where we make people and companies better. We have been a practicing consulting firm for close to 10 years now. We have worked with companies in every single industry. So we are not industry specific. I came from the consumer packaging companies for 25 years, working for lots of Fortune 100 companies and learning systems and processes that they use and that they have been quite successful over the past 100 years.
Wow.
And so I have taken what I learned in corporate America and started I'm Not Mad at You in 2017. And so we have been bringing information, education, guidance, counseling, console, all things you can imagine to support CEOs and leaders. Our most popular program is our CEO soundboarding program, where we work with the CEO weekly. We talk to them every single week. We don't allow decisions to be made without our guidance or our input. We feel like if a leader goes too long without, some discussion or decision making, that they can make decisions that we can't correct or go back on. So we like to stay close, and we've been very successful thus far.
Well, I'm very excited to have you. I know our listeners are going to benefit greatly from this. Let's introduce the show so we can get started.
Let's do it.
Welcome to Small Business Pivots, a podcast produced for small business owners. I'm your host, Michael Morrison, founder and CEO of Boss, where we make business ownership simplified for success. Our business is helping yours grow. Boss offers business loans with business coaching support. Apply in minutes and get approved and funded in as little as 24 to 48 hours at businessownershipsimplified.com. All right, welcome back to Small Business Pivots. I'm excited to get going, but I know our listeners kind of like to be relatable to our guest. So do you have any background? I know we've talked before about college, and we root for the same colors, if you will, collegiately. And so
Yes.
Any background information you can catch us up on so we kind of know who you are?
I like to think I have a colorful background. I've done a lot of things in my life. I was an elite tennis player from the time I was 8 years old through college. I played for the University of Oklahoma, singles and doubles, and quite successful. And transitioned from elite athlete into corporate America, as we said, and spent 25 years working in that environment, breaking glass ceilings and traveling all over the world. As you said, learning every day, having an opportunity to learn with some really intelligent people, very good guidance, counseling, and I am an avid golfer. Well, I was an avid golfer before I moved to Mexico. I played every single Saturday for 15 years. I have a hole in one.
Hey.
I've broken 80 from the men's and the women's tees.
Wow.
So I transitioned from tennis to golf and became a avid golfer. And then when I turned 40, I started running marathons, and I've run 3 marathons and 10 half marathons.
Wow.
And I'm a world traveler. I've been to 26 countries, and I currently live in Mexico now. And the whole point of starting this company was actually with that goal in mind, was to essentially be able to live anywhere in the country and run a successful consulting practice. And we really feel like with a phone and a computer, that's as much as we need to be accessible to our clients and to leaders that are looking for guidance and help for their companies.
Woo! You don't sit down very long, do you?
I'm going to tell you something, Michael. This is a client of mine brought this to my attention. So he put in variables about his life and found out that he was 1 in 8 billion in terms of the things that his parents had been married a certain amount of time. And he just put in different variables about his life. And he said, I'm 1 in 8 billion. I said, look, so there's one of you in the world, right? There's 8 billion people. So I decided I would put in those same variables for my life in different things that I had done, the holes in one and the marathons and elite athlete. And I am 1 to the 23rd power. Essentially, I don't even understand that math. I'm not possible. According to ChatGPT and the statistics that I have accomplished in my life, someone like me does not exist. In fact, to the 23rd power, they don't exist. So
Wow.
I kind of know that about myself. I believe that about myself. I have a tattoo that you can't see, but I
Believe.
believe a lot in myself and those around me. And if I set my mind to it, usually it's going to happen.
Well, I know our listeners want to hear business, but I have to say, you and I have got to talk about this marathon on another another
Okay.
call because
Okay.
I just
Okay.
ran my first one. Our listeners know that they kind of followed some of my journey. I just ran my first marathon this year, so I'm running my second in 2026. So, but I know our listeners. I know I'm not going to get off on the marathon thing. You've heard it before, so we're going
It
to get
is
on to
like
business.
business.
It is
Listen, though, running a marathon
absolutely.
is one of the best things you can do mentally. If you are a business leader or you are looking to start a business and you have something like a hobby or something that creates discipline or that, demands discipline, I still think it's a good. We can talk about running a marathon because any business owner that would be in the discipline of trying to run a marathon will feel the same way running their business.
Absolutely. I'm just south of 60 years old. People thought I was crazy for doing it. And here I am doing it again. And yes, you are correct. I mean, you've got to be adaptable. You got to learn. You got to train. Nothing's ever going to go your way. I mean, it's just there's so many disciplines in
You're going
that.
to want to quit. You're going to want to quit
Yes,
often. I mean, no matter how much training you do, there's a moment in almost all of our marathons that we want to quit. And I can say that a lot of business owners probably feel the same way at certain
yeah,
points when they're in the race. So
yeah,
there's a lot of I strongly recommend athletics and different hobbies that do pair well for business leaders and owners as something to have as a diversion at the very least, but something that also hones your skills. For instance, you working and training for a marathon is helping and training you to run your business. You have more discipline, you have more stamina. There are other things that it translates to for sure.
yeah. And especially if things don't go your way, I know 10 days before the marathon day for me, all of a sudden runner's knee crept in. I was like, I've been training for 9 months and the race is a week. So I had to improvise, right? I had to
I
call some,
understand.
some
I
medical
understand.
people. I had to go online. Had to find some, like, what do I do? What do I do? I am running this race. I did not spend 9 months running in minus 10-degree weather and wind and everything else to miss this one day. And so I made it. And so, like you said, it's business. I want to get to the real quick. You were in corporate America, right? And so for
Yes,
a
I
lot of
was.
small business owners, we think, oh, how does Amazon do what they do? How does Walmart have all these systems? And I'm like, you can do the same thing. So can we talk about the difference between corporate and small business mindset when it comes to systems and processes? Because that you
I
mentioned,
would love to because I've been able. Yeah, sorry, I think it cut out there for a second. But no, I would love to. This is really something that I feel like in our consulting practice that I'm not mad at you. We bring corporate processes and practices to small businesses. The reason that is for first of all is that we are not taught financial acuity when we are raised, and we don't usually learn it in college or high school. And if we go off into whatever fields we go into, so let's use for instance a construction individual who their father and their grandfather had a construction company, and in all likelihood they're going to go into construction, right? And say they do. What they didn't learn was finance, accounting, the math of their business, or the systems and processes that the Fortune 100 companies use. And I will tell you, it's very heavy on math. And that's not very sexy. In fact, I did a survey and found out that people are 7 times more likely to talk about sex than they're going to talk about financial acuity or their financial position or their financial situation, or math or numbers or data or all the math that our businesses and personally our life tell us. And so what the corporations do is they use systems and processes based on forecasting, movement, expectations, new launches, environmental concerns in terms of what's going on publicly. They use everything. And then they have a lot of systems and processes that you follow. For instance, working for the consumer product companies that made all the over-the-counter products that you guys can imagine, Advil, Tylenol, Robitussin, I sold all those products into companies like Walmart. And you had all the data. You were provided all of the data on the products. And this particular Advil 100 count turns 2 units per week. They're going to sell 2 of these a week. You looked at that math, and if that was not competitive, in all likelihood, that product was going to get taken out of the Walmart set because they were using math. And the average item was moving 5 units per week. So all this math, especially for these big companies, gets bottled up and shown to you in ways that you make excellent forecast, decision-making, prognosis, whatever you want to call it, to give that company the information for them to make accurate decisions with production, with so many different things, marketing decisions, PR decisions. So everything rolls into those numbers, into the math. And any decision that's made is a mathematical decision. That is the biggest difference that I see with small businesses. Very rarely do they use math to make a decision. First of all, they don't collect the math or don't do enough homework to know the math. Let's say you're a small business owner and you want to start a company. And you happen to be in construction, and you're in the Dallas Metroplex market. You're going to look at, if you are a residential construction person, you're going to look at how many houses are being built, how many are in the market area that I'm capable and have the skill sets to build that house. And then it starts with, let's say there's 100,000 houses being built in Dallas in 2026. Okay, you know you're not going to get all 100,000 of them, right? What I tell people is mathematically, you could expect maybe to get 0.05%. That doesn't excite people when they hear that either.
Yeah, no.
So the first thing you're doing is you're figuring out, no, you're going to be told no 99.9% of the time, typically. So you need a big enough number to start with to give yourself and your business a chance to even have success. Because the other part of numbers that's so critical, and this is really easy for people to understand, is you need more inputs than you have outputs. And so often people, that sounds simple. And that applies not only to our businesses, it applies to our personal life, correct? Any situation that we are involved in, we need more inputs than outputs. So you have to be conscientious and looking at the inputs and the outputs to understand where you stand. So we spend a lot of time working in the numbers. So if we're working with a startup company, we demand that they provide a forecast, or we work with them to create a forecast, usually for 18 months to 2 years. And I'm telling you, this is not the fun stuff people are excited about. I'm so excited to start my new company, and they want to create logos. They want to spend 6 weeks creating a logo because that's fun. They can see their work there. They want to create an ad or, a slogan, different things like that. Whereas I tell people, don't worry so much about your logo. That's not going to probably end up getting you any sales. What is going to get you sales is a good story, a value proposition, a point of differentiation. So you have math that's really critical, and doing your homework in terms of if you're starting or if you're in business, you need to be looking at your numbers constantly. We look at the profit and loss statement every single month. Every single one of our owners, CEOs, they pull up that P&L every month. We have to review that. We don't look at the whole thing. A lot of people say that's intimidating. Well, of course it is if you look at the entire document. But there's about 5 line items. If you go straight to those line items, you have a ton of information for each month. What is my net revenue? What did I do in sales? Was that more than last month? Was that less than last month? Was that more than 1 year ago? That's a big common mistake I see, is that when business owners are looking at their business, they'll say, look, April was better than March, and they're excited, which of course that's something to celebrate. Let's say they sold more in April than they did March. So they say, wow, this is great. But that also could have been market conditions, right? So comparing April to March isn't really what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to compare April to April a year ago. April can only be compared to April, and March can only be compared to March. So these are common mistakes that business owners make all the time. And it's not because they're dumb. It's not because they're not savvy. It's because you're not taught. I didn't learn any of this in school. And I didn't learn any of this in high school. No. College. No. I didn't learn it until it was part of my job. And I work for the Fortune 100 companies. So I already am a 1% person in the United States of America. Only 1% of the people are going to work for the Fortune 100 companies. So
Yeah,
already I'm going to be giving information that the majority of human beings are never, ever going to be taught. That is why the Fortune 100 companies don't go out of business too. They're not sharing that information with anybody. They're not sharing with you their systems and processes at all.
no, and for good reason. And you mentioned construction, so I kind of want to mention, just to kind of put it into perspective for our listeners, when I ask people what's the most important part of a house, 99% of people will tell me the foundation. And I'm like, well, I have a family member that develops neighborhoods. And
Right.
according to him and others I know, the foundation is important, but the non-sexy part is the dirt. If they don't get that dirt
Yes.
compacted and moved correctly, you're going to have flooding issues, and the foundation, the concrete foundation, will fail if the dirt is not solid. So that's what we're kind of talking about, is your
Yes.
math and your numbers. That's the dirt. It's the most important.
Absolutely. It's
It
exactly,
holds
it's the
everything up.
most unsexy, the ugliest part of it. And yet I love that analogy of it is the dirt. It is, it has to be packed and it has to be moved around, and you have to constantly review it and look at it and understand where you stand. And as I said, with my clients, once we get into it, they really appreciate it. And I do feel like it changes them dramatically. Back to, obviously they're learning it in their businesses, but what you learn in your business, you can take into other areas of your life. And because I work with small to mid-sized business owners, they usually are small families, growing families. A lot of my clients are 30 to 40 years old, so they're starting young families. They don't just have goals for the business, they have goals for their families. And so a lot of the things that we're doing, it's like, look, we want to get you to sales and net income of this number, but I'm not just doing it for the business. I want it for them because they're going to get a new house. They're going to have another child. They're going to, add a pool, go on an extra vacation. There's a lot of reasons that, once you gear and shine the light this direction for your business leaders, it really can have a larger impact in their entire life. And we try to consult from a bigger picture like that, in the sense of course, we're making their company better, but we say we make people and companies better because we feel like when we make the company better, we're making the person better or the people in that company better.
Yeah,
And
I don't call it work-life balance. I call it work-life integration, right? So they have to complement each other in order for someone to be happy, right?
sure,
If
sure.
not, we see burnout, we see people miserable and things. Well, let me. So all of the systems and processes are good. Numbers are good, but the most common thing I'm sure you and I hear, I'm wearing so many hats. How do I even fit that stuff in? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges for business owners is, I know I need systems and processes, but how do we get those done? How do I find time, carve out when I've got a fire over here I got to put out and an angry customer or a project that's behind? What are your suggestions coming from the corporate and then seeing that in the business world?
You have to, just like we were talking about the marathon, discipline. It's discipline. And we understand that, as it always is, since we were talking about construction, it's a lot more fun for the owner of the construction company to go on site and go check how the operations of that project are going. That's easy for that person to go because they understand construction typically. But the discipline is, no, you leave that for your project manager. You've delegated that task to another person that you pay a salary to, right? So you have to trust in your delegation process, and you need to delegate correctly, obviously. So if you have a project manager that is responsible to ensure that your project is going accurately, you can't go babysit that person. You need to be disciplined. And if it's time to work on payroll and it's Thursday and it's payroll day, you got to sit in that office and you've got to do payroll and hope that the person that you delegated to the other tasks that are necessary are handling those. But I definitely think it's discipline. And as we talked about the marathon, it's you have to carve out the time for the task you don't like. And as we just said, leaders generally lean towards tasks they like. So it is stamina, it's discipline, it's consistency, and it's a matter of setting the time aside for those other tasks. Because I always say this, if you run a construction company or you're a photographer and you start a photography company or photography business, you're probably only going to get to do photography 10 or 15% of the time. The rest of the time is going to be all those other tasks that you speak of, payroll and accounting and finance and marketing and sales and business development and lawyer and HR and manager and all the things that we just discussed. That's actually your role as a CEO, because you represent the company, right? Like technically as a CEO, you are an individual inside the organization, and then you have employees. The company is a standalone feature as well. I mean, it is an entity of itself. And so it's hard a lot of times for the owner to necessarily speak for the company because they're speaking for themselves because they're running around, as you just said, wearing a million hats. But somebody has to be the spokesperson for the company and make sure that the things that are necessary to be done get done. And that's where the CEO has to have that discipline and commitment to the task they don't appreciate. And if you don't, you have to delegate those tasks. People, use people like myself to also help, because a lot of time it is a time management situation of like, okay, this is a focus, delegate this, but keep yourself involved in these things. So it's a juggling act, but I do think anybody that's going to start a business needs to be prepared that you're not going to get to do the thing you like as much as you like to do it.
Absolutely. And you mentioned discipline and delegation. I remember in my journey of training for the marathon, had I tried to figure things out myself, I would have failed. So what do I do when I'm looking for the shoes? I go to an expert. I didn't just go to your local, I'm not going to call anybody under the bus, but just a local shoe store that has everything. I went to a shoe running store, got their advice when I was looking for a belt. How am I going to carry all my electrolytes and my gels, and what's the best way, and all, what do I? And then people don't even see the 50 to 70 miles you run every single week, not all at once. For me, it wasn't all at once. It was in intervals, right?
Of course.
And the hills and the walking sprints, and people don't see that. And so I wouldn't have known to do that had I not gone to experts. And so kind of what you're saying is in business, go to the experts, quit. You will save yourself so much time and money if you quit trying to figure things out yourself, right?
The leaders and the CEOs of every one of those Fortune 100 companies we were talking about, they all have coaches. They all have consultants. They all have a board. They have 12 different members or 6 different members. They have advisory councils. They are coached probably more than anybody you can imagine. So it goes to say that the small businesses, in my opinion, sort of have this mentality of, we're doing this, we're strong, we can do this, but they kind of miss out on that coaching aspect. The smaller businesses are not taking advantage of the greatest help. But you find that the greatest, whether it be the athletes, CEOs, leaders, presidents, whatever you want to call it, they all have help. They all have coaches, many coaches in many cases, right? Many coaches. Yeah. So I think it's a misnomer that the small to mid-sized business owner thinks that it's like a feather in the cap. We've actually done this in America. We've made this like they can do it all, right? And they can wear all the hats. I don't agree with that. As an athlete, as someone who has run marathons, as someone who worked for the Fortune 100 companies, we always had help. We always had assistance. You had any type of, coaching you needed, you had available to you. Same thing with the marathon. I didn't go run a marathon. I ran 451 miles before I actually ran a marathon.
Yeah.
In the 9 months leading up to, or I forgot what it was. It was a staggering amount of miles. And I'd tell people like, you guys think the 26 miles is a lot. We actually run 500 miles before we ever get to that marathon, right? Yeah. And as you said, on Sunday mornings at 4:00 in the morning, you're getting up, you're going to the running groups or however the different ones of us train. It's the same thing for CEOs, athletes. It's the exact same thing. So I do think that small business owners should think more seriously about being coached. But there's that gung-ho, I can do it, right? Yeah. But I think that's where we're getting it wrong. I really do. And
absolutely,
they'll spend money in other areas and they'll spend time and energy in other areas versus, listen, we can save time and money most likely and get you on track really quickly. And that's one of the things that I'm Not Mad at You is very proud of. We work 83% faster than other consulting companies. And for instance, when we come in and we review a company or we come on with a new company, we immediately go to that P&L document that we talked about. That's the first thing I look at. I don't really have to have a lot of conversation with the business owner before looking at that profit and loss statement. And at that point, after about 20 minutes of looking at that statement, I have lots of questions, and we're pretty much working on their business right then and there. And a lot of consulting companies come in and say, like, read this book, practice this, or do this quiz, or, take this test, or a lot of work before you get to the work. And with I'm Not Mad at You, we jump into the work of their company the first minute. I don't have processes to go teach them, like, go read my book or go study my process. No. Let's look at your business. Let's start talking about your business. Whatever I'm Not Mad at You's got going on is not really that relevant. We are now fully embedded in your company, in your business, to help you and your company. And so we don't have other motives. We don't have other goals. We want to help the companies fast. That's a success story to us. And I'd rather have a client for a month or two and send them off on their way kicking ass than claim a client for 6 years and them do okay, but nothing to brag about.
Yeah, that's important. And I know some of our listeners are kind of in the startup phase. So if you are, and literally the revenue's not there yet to hire a consultant, I will say that when I started my business 3 decades ago, getting into the entrepreneur world, I didn't have money right up front. But I promise you, if you're in that position, at least go find a mentor. Go find another business owner that's successful. I promise you, if they say no, I'll say yes. Come to me and help you at no cost. But I will say, when I asked successful business owners, not one of them told me no. They were happily excited to help a newbie, right, in the field.
Right. Yes, of course. Of course. I mean, I enjoy what I do, with or without the money.
Yes.
You talked about work-life balance. I don't really feel like I'm ever working. I mean, I left corporate America 10 years ago, and honestly, I've probably worked harder in the last 10 years. That's not really true, but I mean, it just depends on what time you kind of look at. But certainly, in this kind of position, and same with you, you kind of work 24/7. I mean, I have my phone right here. If an email comes to me, if a text comes to me, I leave myself available to my clients. So if they've got a situation and they need to text me, I'm available. If it's not like I don't look at my emails, I can be sitting in my house and be checking emails. That's a lot more enjoyable doing it for myself. So I don't really mind working 24 hours a day if that's what was required.
Yeah.
I like to think I'm pretty efficient, and I have found a way that I don't have to work 24 hours a day because I think I'm fairly efficient. And if I'm not, like you said, I find out a way to be. And nowadays there's so many places we can go for help, right? You can hire someone, but you can go on YouTube, you can go, to the internet, you can go to ChatGPT. To your point, I tell people, any minute you spend in consternation is a wasted minute, because there's so much help available to us today, whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. But it is hard to ask for help. It's probably one of the most difficult things. People don't like to talk about money, and people don't like to ask for help. And so if you're in that state of mind, you're going to have probably a more challenging time than others.
Why do you think that most business owners won't ask for help? And the follow-up question to that is there any encouragement you can give to them just to ask for help? You're listening to Small Business Pivots. This podcast is produced by my company, Boss. Our business is helping yours grow. Boss offers business loans with business coaching support. Apply in minutes and get approved and funded in as little as 24 to 48 hours at businessownershipsimplified.com. If you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share it as well. Now let's get back to our special guest. Why do you think that most business owners won't ask for help? And the follow-up question to that is there any encouragement you can give to them just to ask for help? So why don't they ask for help, and what can you inspire them to ask for help?
I will speak to this. I probably have a 60-40 ratio, maybe 70-30 ratio with working with men to women. First of all, I'm going to speak for the men. They're not great at asking for help in general. I'm not saying women are either, but if we looked at the statistics in the world or whatever, let's say America, probably 60-something% of the businesses are owned by men, right? Maybe it's 70. I don't know what the split is today. But that being said, let's just speak to men first. They're not great at being vulnerable, and they're not great at asking for help. And I'm not really suggesting that women are either. To be fair, this cuts across both sexes, that asking for help and being vulnerable isn't all of our favorite thing. The second side of it is, obviously, if you are a business leader and you are trying to purvey confidence and that you have everything together, you're not running around telling people you don't have everything together. And so I say this with my consulting practice. I don't get as many referrals as I would like to because I've done great work. But I say this, if one of the business leaders that I've worked with is at a cocktail party or at a social event, he's not probably bragging about his consultant because he's probably not bragging about the fact that he needed help. So it's like a silent crisis that no one wants to be like, oh, look, I've got a consultant that's kind of helping make these decisions, because they want to look like they're the ones making the decisions. They want to look strong and confident. So it's, first of all, in general, humans aren't specifically great at asking for help. I can speak to, like I said, I've probably worked with more men, and the fascinating thing is the ones I work with clearly did not have a problem because they're working with a consultant. But it is hard. And to say how to help people in that, I just said, like, if you're sitting around and you have consternation, or you're having troubles making decisions, or you're struggling with whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, be it with your business or your life, you should be asking for help in whatever method you want. Right? It doesn't really matter. We have so many different ways that we can get help today that you don't necessarily have to hire a consultant. I am now of the belief I can ask, for instance, AI questions that are giving me, to be fair, I can ask it questions about business plans, sales planning, things that I wouldn't have thought the resources would have been as easily and available a year ago. They're there. I'm asking really difficult questions of ChatGPT right now that I myself would know the answer to, and it's crafting it a little better than me. Mm-hmm. But I'd hope that with the human touch, we're the bridge between, like, okay, here's everything to do, but you also need support, you need encouragement, you need, some of the things that, again, on their own, they weren't able to do it. So
yeah, that's there's an emotional element that a human still offers that AI doesn't. And so when people are now I know our younger generation probably can't relate to what I'm fixing to share at all. But back in the day, I want the men, because I'm a man, so I want them to think about this. Think about, if you're not going to ask for help, think about the end in mind. Keep the end in mind, because when I was growing up and we would go on a family vacation, we didn't have GPS. We didn't have phones. And for some reason, Dad always got lost, and Mom would say, there's another gas station. Why don't you stop and ask for direct? Oh, I got this. I got this. Oh, here's another gas station. Ask. Yeah. I got this. And maybe 30 minutes to an hour later, my dad was like, yeah, I should have stopped. And that's for help.
For our generation, that was a joke. I mean, it was a common joke that we all said out loud was, if somebody got lost, and generally in this situation from our time frame, it was the guy got lost and he wasn't going to ask. And meanwhile, the woman, the first gas station, help, right? Yeah. But I mean, really, so there is, it's ego, it's pride. There's so many things that play, and it isn't just business, right? I mean, this is, and back to, I'm not going to blame this only on men, because I see it in both the sexes, but you're right. I mean, you pull the car over and ask for directions. And running a business is the exact same way. Playing on a basketball, team is the same. All these people have coaches. All of them have help. So I do think that the small business, mid-sized business owner needs to be more comfortable with the idea that to run a successful business, I'm probably going to get help in exactly what you said. You don't have to pay for it. Get a good group of people that surround you that can mentor you. But I will say this, sometimes a consultant is better than that round table of friends you might have, because oftentimes you're getting consult or, guidance from people who themselves haven't done it either. Also, usually with our circle of friends or even our outer circle friends that might be there to help us, they're going to support you. They're not there to shoot holes through your ideas. That as much as they're a good source of, camaraderie and to help, that group usually isn't going to be as honest with you as you might need them to be. So I am encouraging of people to use their resources that they have, and often they do. They're asking their social group about business questions and ideas and logos and things like that. At the same time, and that doesn't hold water, and that's why one of the reasons the company's called I'm Not Mad is we're real honest. We're going to tell the truth. You may not like it. You might be mad at us, but at the end of the day, our goal is there for your company, for it to be better, not for any other reason. So if we're saying it, we mean it.
Yeah. So all business owners, regardless of your gender, ask for help, because I don't know if you witnessed this or not, but we were coaching also. And so almost every business owner at one point after they've worked with us always says something to this effect: I wish I would have hired a coach earlier or sooner. Yeah. And so when I say keep the end in mind, know that you're going to eventually wish you would have had guidance. So just get it now. Get it over with. Ask for help.
I'm with you. But I also think sometimes people have to hit their head against the wall. Everybody comes to it at different places and spaces. And to be fair, some people will be successful despite themselves. There will be plenty of people that will never receive coaching and never receive help and do very well. So it's not that it's mandatory. It's not that every single person will need this. I do think the majority of people will be better for it if they have scenarios where it makes sense to bring in somebody to help you. But you're right. Keeping the end in mind is very important. For us, the end in mind is always the sales goals, right? And the revenue goals that they have, because typically a small business owner is running that business, and they also have a household to manage as well when they leave that building. And so at the end of the day, like we just said, they need the inputs to cover the outputs. And if you're a small business owner, you have two inputs and two outputs, right? You've got your household and you've got your business. And no matter whatever it is, all of the outputs have to be less than, or did I get this wrong? All the inputs need to be more than the outputs, right? So It's a simple concept, but back to, if you ask the average person if they keep a budget, if they balance their checkbook, if they look at their, let's just say in personal world, like, are they looking at their balance each, week, or do they balance their checkbook, or people have budgets, or they can tell you, oh, I spend roughly XYZ dollars a month. I think I know what my outputs are. They're not usually right. They almost always underestimate, almost always. And it's the same thing for a business. It's the same thing. If I ask a business owner, what about how much does it cost you to run your business, a month? Oh, I think it's about $100,000. Then you look at their P&L, it's $140,000, and you're sitting there going, that's $40,000 a month that you were guessing wrong. So it's the same concept. You can't make good decisions if you don't know the math of your business. You just can't. And then that starts playing into the more fun, sexy things. The math then plays into sales, marketing, your spend, your business development. How much money can I spend on XYZ marketing activity? And then I need to review that XYZ marketing activity to see if it did, in fact, give me a return on investment. And I can't look at that 2 years later. I need to look at that. If I ran an ad in February, I need to be evaluating it. If it was a 2-week ad, the day the ad's over, look at the data. Maybe nowadays we get such access to data that we can be looking at it the minute the ad starts. We were able to assess something.
Yeah,
and that's
in real
just
time.
Those are the areas that so many people fail. Not fail. They just don't. That's where they're not spending their time.
Yeah, Yeah, I always say we don't know what we don't know, so hire an
Correct.
expert. So
Correct.
I know.
I want them all to hire an expert, but I also want to be able to offer information if they're just listening to this podcast that would actually be helpful to them, even if they didn't hire me, right? So ideally, listen, more inputs than outputs, right? And
Yep.
know your inputs and know your outputs and understand where could I change things? Where could I shift things? What could I do to positively impact these numbers? And, constantly review, assess, redeploy, debrief, reassess. It never
It's
ends.
so important and never ends. And unfortunately, podcast episodes do end. But I do know,
Good
I
segue.
do know
Good
our
segue.
listeners are probably like, but I want to learn more. How can they find you, connect with you, all that? Do you have a podcast, blogs, all that stuff?
We have a website. It's imnotmadatyou.com. Pretty simple, www.imnotmadatyou.com. We are on the social. We're on YouTube, but really the podcast we're spending our time is with guest appearances like yourself. So, and we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and exposing your audience to I'm Not Mad at You, and hopefully they'll find something valuable in this conversation.
Well, I know I did, so I'm sure they did as well. So, is there a particular social platform that you're on where you interact with people or engage with people?
Not really.
Not yet.
I'm not, I mean, I'll be honest with you. Social for us was we were behind the curve. We really felt as a business consultant, we were going to play in corporate America. We were going to play in Google and in different places, referrals, word of mouth. So social was not a priority to us 10 years ago, which now it is. But as we have learned, nobody cares about hearing about consulting. It doesn't matter what I show them, spreadsheets, math. It's not sexy. It's not entertaining. But what is entertaining is on social media, on I'm Not Mad at You, we trespass in Tulum. And they love that. We get into buildings and properties that no one would see otherwise. That they love. So it makes no sense with a consultant. But we are testing the market and checking to see what actually has traction. And
So you're
guess
following your own advice.
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense. Like I said, we're a business consultant. We play in the traditional space. Social is fun, but I'm not mad at you.com will get you where you need. And if you want to follow our socials, we are I'm Not Mad at You on Instagram and Facebook, but that's just for fun.
Yeah, no, I love it. Well, and it's exactly what you consult, and that is know where your people are, know what works. Just because everybody else is doing a viral video or trying to get a viral video doesn't mean that that's the best use of your time. So inputs, outputs, understand those. I always end with one last question, and that is if you were in front of an audience of business owners, different industries, different years of existence, what is one thing that could be applicable to all of them? In other words, a quote, a book, just one last insight, anything like that?
Believe. You have to believe to succeed. I mean, no matter what, you got to believe to succeed. And I really believe our mindset is extraordinarily powerful. And you get a room full of business leaders. You probably have a lot of ego. You probably have a lot of confidence. But sometimes confidence and ego are not belief. So you really got to believe in what you're doing. And I really believe if you do, that will drive most people to success, is that belief and that will.
Absolutely. Well, you've been a wealth of information and a blessing to many. I wish you continued success.
Michael, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Small Business Pivots. This podcast is created and produced by my company, Boss. Our business is growing yours. Boss offers flexible business loans with business coaching support. Apply in minutes and get approved and funded in as little as 24 to 48 hours at businessownershipsimplified.com. If you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share it as well. If you need help growing your business, email me at michael@michaeldmorrison.com. We'll see you next time on Small Business Pivots.